Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. So tonight what we have to look at is another failed attempt at a crowdfunding project where backers' money was allegedly misappropriated and misused. And once again, if you want to mirror this video for safety's sake, please go right ahead. It is one of those sort of videos. So out of the recent trends in technology, 3D printing has become one of the most visible, with constant articles about various sorts of 3D printed projects coming out every day. And so with this recent upswell in interest for the technology, it makes perfect sense that numerous crowdfunding projects involving 3D printing would come about. One of the biggest barriers to 3D printing, however, is cost. And so this created a space in the market that the project that we're looking at right now, the Peachy printer, hoped to fill. In essence, what they were trying to create was a $100 3D printer with minimal moving parts, which could manufacture a range of items and which would also act as a 3D scanner. And also, unlike one of the other projects I've covered previously, they managed to produce a working prototype before they launched two simultaneous crowdfunding campaigns, one on IndieGoGo and one on Kickstarter, the latter of which was more successful. All in all, they managed to raise well over 650,000 Canadian dollars, and up until late May, all seemed well with the project, with regular progress updates being posted to their pages. However, on May the 11th, 2016, one of the Peachy printer founders, Rylan Grayston, posted a very troubling update to Kickstarter, as well as several YouTube videos and a document dump of bank statements, legal documents, and other valuable information. What all of this stuff spells out is an epic tale of theft and betrayal on the part of Grayston's former business partner, David Bowe, which ended up costing the project over $300,000, which was almost half of the funds they raised, which he allegedly embezzled in order to pay for his personal home. So what I'm going to do is go through the events as described by Grayston from beginning to end. So, according to Grayston, before the crowdfunding projects even got off the ground, David Bowe invested $10,000 into him creating the first early prototype of the Peachy printer out of common household items. This established the business relationship between them going forward. Grayston was the technical guy who designed and manufactured the 3D printers, and Bowe was the finance guy who handled the business administration side of things. Together they made up the leadership of the Peachy printer project. On the 20th of September 2013, the Kickstarter campaign was launched, and it closed on the 20th of October, netting a total of $659,091 over their $50,000 goal. The IndieGoGo closed 5 days later on the 25th for a total of $74,167 at 148% funded. So when you add it up, the total money that they got in from crowdfunding totals in at $709,091. And when you take away what Grayston claims were all the Kickstarter fees and drop pledges, this brings the total from crowdfunding down to $661,602. This brings us to the 6th of November 2013, which is where the story begins to get weird. So according to Grayston's timeline, this is also the day that the money from Kickstarter came in. Only it didn't come into the company account, instead it went straight into the personal bank account of company co-founder David Bowe. Now according to the story put forth by Grayston, the reason for this was that the company wasn't yet incorporated and they didn't have an official corporate bank account yet, and so they put all of the funds into Bowe's account as a temporary measure until this could be sorted out later. And so David Bowe was due to repay all of this money, all the $500,000, back once the corporate bank account was set up. In December 2013, according to bank statements provided by Bowe, he spent $165,000 before making the first payment to start the Peachy printer company off of $200,000 into the corporate account. And according to the facts released by Grayston, by March 2014, Bowe had whittled all of his Kickstarter money away, which left the business running on just the $200,000 initial payment and the IndieGoGo money for almost a year. On September the 18th, 2014, according to Grayston, he had finally had enough and he demanded that Bo pay up in full, which resulted in a payment of just $30,000. On October the 29th, 2014, the check for company payroll bounced, and this led to Bo paying out $17,000 back into the company to cover payroll costs. This takes us to November the 21st, 2014. This was the day, according to Grayston, where Bo finally admitted to him that he had spent all of the money entrusted to him for the project during a phone call.
So the truth is that you knowingly spent Peachy money on that.
Yeah.
You spent if I was to put a serial number on the dollars that came in from the Kickstarter, they got spent on supplies for the house. Is that the truth?
Exactly. That's exactly what happened.
What he had spent all of the money on, according to Bo, was the construction of his new house. In Canada, there's a specific type of mortgage for building a house called a process draw construction loan. This is a loan that covers the building of a house in stages, with bank officials inspecting each stage of progress and then granting more funds for the next stage of progress. According to Bo, what he planned to do was to speed up the construction of his house by using the Kickstarter money, and then once he got the payment for the next phase, he was going to put that money back into his account and give it back to the corporate account of Peachy Printer. This is, however, where things get a little fuzzy, as he claims that the builders stopped showing up to the site and construction ground to a halt, and so he didn't have any money to pay the company back. He also claims to have spent money on fittings that the house was not ready for, like kitchen cabinets, etc., and all of the stuff added up to something in the neighborhood of $300,000. Now, in response to learning of this embezzlement, instead of going public, Grayston and his legal counsel created a document on the 30th of November 2014, which you can find mirrored down below, called the Agreement for Repayment. This document, signed by Bo, spells out the terms of repayment and what happens if he defaults on making payments back to the company. The money was due to be repaid in 3 installments, $15,000 on or before the 27th of November 2014, $200,000 which was due on December the 27th, 2014, and the rest of the money which was due on the 27th of January 2015. The interest rate on these repayments was 0% unless in the case of a default, in which case a rate of 20% would be applied to the payments due. In the event he defaulted on any of these payments, aka failed to pay them back, the company would have 4 options that they could choose any mixture of: declaring the remaining money immediately payable, offsetting any liabilities that they wanted from the company onto him, suing him, or commencing criminal proceedings against him. Another provision also uses the property as well as 2 other pieces of land owned by Bo as security on this repayment plan, so if he failed to repay the money, then the company was in every right to take these. This document also contains details of the mortgage that Bo had out on the house, in particular that he had a $560,000 construction mortgage out from the Toronto Dominion Bank. This money was to come in 3 installments: a cash advance of $140,000 to start the construction, $270,000 before the building was complete, and another $150,000 upon completion of the property. And so according to this document, in order to pay off the debt, the plan was for the company to take 60% of his first mortgage payment, 75% of the second payment, and 100% of his final mortgage payment. Furthermore, several provisions stripped David Bo out of his role at the company. In particular, he was to immediately resign and sell all of his stock back to the company, which made Grayston the sole owner. And so after this agreement was signed, the clock was basically ticking over the next few months on him making repayments to the firm. According to Grayston, on the 2nd of December 2014, Bo made the first payment of $15,000 on time as planned. On December the 10th, Grayston and his brother drove to Bo's home in Hudson Bay to collect evidence as provided for under the repayment agreement. While they were there, they filmed a video interview with Bo, which can be seen online, where he confesses to taking the money and spending it on a house.
Without further ado, what has happened, Dave?
Well, I'm sorry, but
I went and spent approximately $250,000 of our Kickstarter money on building my house. No one else knew about it, and it's something that I've done that I regret, and I'm sorry for doing it.
The next thing that happened was that David defaulted on the payment agreement, missing both the December and January payments, and only making a payment of $45,000 to Peachy Printer on March the 2nd, 2015. According to Grayston, it was at about this time that they were looking for outside investors to get them out of this financial hole. However, these plans fell through, and so the next day, on March the 3rd, they took out a family loan of $50,000. According to Grayston, nothing much happened until June 2015, when he went to confront Bo about the rest of the money that he owed, and Bo essentially lawyered up. Peachy Printer then sent a request to Bo's lawyers for payment in full, and got an email on July the 6th, 2015, which was the last communication they had with him, stating that the lawyers were calculating how much he owed Peachy Printer. Throughout 2015 and into 2016, they pursued another course of action, government grants, which gave them a further cash injection of $215,000 all told. Finally, in November 2015, as confirmed by the Saskatoon Police Department, after obtaining new legal counsel and knowing about the embezzlement for over a year, Grayston finally opened a police inquiry, which incidentally is still waiting on evidence from the company 7 months later, at least according to police sources. While all of this was going on, the company was getting into deeper and deeper financial strife, leading to severe cost-cutting measures, and as all of their free cash was tied into inventory for making the printers, they didn't really have an income stream. Though it should be pointed out that for all intents and purposes to the public at this point, it still looked as if the project was continuing on as normal. By the time Grayston decided to go public with all of this information in mid-May 2016, all of the company bank accounts were in the red, and it appears that they have completely run out of money at this stage. It should also be noted that as they approached this point of financial ruin, they decided that one final option might be viable, and that was selling the printers to the general public before they give the printers to their backer so that they can make a profit to buy more parts to sell more printers. But as the cost of laser certification mounted, they found that this plan was not going to work either, and so their options diminished down to where we're currently at. And so that is about the size of Grayston's version of events. The project was brought down by a brazen act of misappropriation of funds on the part of David Bo, and that's all there is to it. The reality though is that when you start to actually look into the documents that Grayston has presented, things start to become a lot more complex. For instance, let's take a closer look at the repayment agreement, the binding contract that Bo signed. As part of this agreement, there was supposed to be a direction for payment sent directly to Bo's bank and his lawyers, which redirected part of the mortgage payments that he was getting on his house directly into the Peachy Printer corporate account. Now, Bo was supposed to receive his mortgage in 3 installments. He was going to get $140k in advance, $270k halfway through the build of the house, and another $150k upon the completion of the house. And according to this agreement, Peachy Printer was actually entitled to 60% of the first payment made to Bo, which they could immediately get, and which had already been received by Bo according to documents that I pulled out of the Saskatchewan Land Office, 75% of the second mortgage payment, and all of the third mortgage payment. And when you crunch the numbers, the first payment, which they should have already got, was $84,000 upon the signing of the document. And yet this payment is recorded nowhere. Now, there could be a million reasons that an agreement like this would fall apart. After all, a contract has to be enforced, and David Bo voided it when he defaulted on the payments. But he was due to pay them $80,000 immediately, and it's curious that this hasn't been brought up anywhere. Another interesting thing to look at is Bo's bank statements. They show him spending far more money than he earned in the months following the Kickstarter payment, but these payments are all on unmarked checks and credit card transactions. The documents don't show that he spent this money on a house. He could have spent this money on anything. And so the story that he spent the money on the house is just that, his story. We have no idea where the money actually went. Another thing to bring up is that Bo actually owes less than people have been led to think. Out of the $587,435 he got in from Kickstarter, he paid back $200,000 almost immediately, leaving him owing $387,435. Before the repayment agreement, he was calculated to have spent a total of $30,000 on payroll and other expenses, and also $62,734 on legitimate company expenses, which left him owing $294,000 to the company. He then paid off $15,000 in the first installment and a further $45,000, which was his last payment. This brings the total he owes at present down to $234,000, almost $100,000 below what has been widely reported. On the flip side, the project also made a lot more money than people think as well. The net amount that they raised from Kickstarter was $587,000. Add to that the $70,000 from IndieGoGo, $200,000 from backer kits, $225,000 from government grants, and $50,000 from family loan, you get $1.132 million Canadian dollars. And when you take off the $234,000 embezzled, you still get $898,000 that the project has had thus far. Now, all of these little points are just the tip of the iceberg in terms of what seems kind of odd about the story of this project's collapse. As always, this video is fully sourced and you can find all of the relevant information and documents down below. Now to conclude, in my opinion, if there has been one thread running through this entire series of events, it is inaction on the part of the people who are supposed to be in charge. Money wasn't demanded to be paid back immediately. Once the embezzlement was out in the open, it took almost a year to go to the cops and 18 months to go to the backers. Now this is just my opinion, but this is no way to run a business. Especially not a business that only exists because of the generosity of a group of people who believe in your product. As for the status of where the project is right now, they're completely tied up with a bunch of stock, so they can't manufacture any of the printers. The one ray of light to come out of this imbroglio is that the police, as well as several other independent authorities, including Kickstarter itself, are all investigating this project, so one way or another, hopefully the backers will get some sort of resolution. And so at the end of the day, the only advice I can actually give to people is be very careful where you put your money. I've been Dangerous Analysis. Thank you to my subscribers, and as always,
good night and good luck.
Ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-dee-ba-da-ba-da-ba-dee-ba-da-ba-da-ba-dee-ba-da-ba-da.